Yes. This is Earl Spin Jr. You're watching True School Sports. All right.
It's personal between me and you, and I'm going to do you some serious harm, you big stiff idiot.
The untouchable True School Sports Empire proudly presents something the boxing games are missing. Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, I'm doing another classic fight review. I'm really enjoying these right now. I did watch a whole slew of old fights recently, because sometimes you got to go back and you got to revisit certain fights just so you can remember these fighters as they were. Because sometimes with the way the world is now with social media, you can forget how great a fighter truly was when they were fighting. So with that being said, the subject of this video is going to be none other than Floyd Mayweather versus the Hitman Ricky Hatton. Now this is a recap of their December 2007 fight. This was an absolute mega event at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Many British fighters have come to America: Anthony Joshua, Prince Nassim Hamed, Tyson Fury, and the list goes on and on and on. But I don't think any British fighter has ever come to America, particularly Las Vegas, and had quite the crowd that Ricky Hatton had that night. I don't know the exact number, but I've heard upwards of like 7,000 to like 10,000 Brits were there that night. I've heard stories of Bob Arum telling the MGM Grand Garden Arena that they had to up the amount of alcohol in the arena just to accommodate the British fans that they were anticipating for the fight. And it felt like a damn Manchester City Premier League football match. I mean, it was really a great crowd all the way around the board. And it was a good fight. It was a good fight. Now, a lot of people who weren't around back then, they like to shit on Ricky Hatton and not give Ricky Hatton his just due. But like, who exactly was Ricky Hatton at the time Floyd fought him? Like, who was this guy Ricky Hatton, and what was the hooting and hollering about? Well, Ricky Hatton was a guy that he wasn't like a guy that you could say was a full-fledged natural 147 pounder, but he's a guy that pretty much had dominated and done some really great things at 140. This is a guy who coming into the fight was 43-0, so he had a good record. He was like the fight before he fought Floyd. He flattened and folded Jose Luis Castillo in 4 rounds. So like a lot of people who like to always say British fighters lose to Mexican fighters, he's actually one of the British fighters that not only beat a Mexican fighter but beat the living shit out of a Mexican fighter and performed. People who hated Floyd at that time, I remember used to say, well, Floyd had a close fight with Jose Luis Castillo and he had to give him a rematch, but Ricky Hatton flattened him out in 4 rounds. The same stupid triangle theories we get from boxing fans today, we were getting them back in 07, okay? So that's what it was. But he had a really good win against Jose Luis Castillo. He was, a couple of years removed from, that magical night at the MEN Arena in Manchester when he upset Costa Tszyu and stopped him in the 11th round, and effectively, I believe, pretty much retired him. Costa Tszyu pretty much retired after that fight. I think it might have been his last fight. Let's see, was it his last fight? It was his last fight. So he retired Costa Tszyu. He was a pretty good underdog going into the fight, and he was a legit big time fighter. Like, we're not gonna downplay Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton was the real deal. Okay, he's pretty much like of that era. I mean, he didn't go undisputed, but you could kind of say he was like the equivalent to maybe like of what a Josh Taylor is now. Maybe even better, honestly, at 140. Because I don't know, he had his own style. At 140, a great fighter. 47, not really his best weight, but he did win the welterweight title against a Luis Collazo, who was 26-1. He won the WBA welterweight title against Collazo, dropped Collazo in the first round. So while he wasn't like he didn't have a long track record of being a proven welterweight, he had a legitimate, credible welterweight win going into the Floyd fight. So then we go to the Floyd fight, right? Really, really interesting fight. Ricky Hatton, being the smaller man, was a guy that pretty much for the most of the fight got in Floyd's chest, was making things very, very ugly, was making things very, very difficult. And Floyd looked very like to be honest with you, I've watched this fight quite a few times, but I haven't watched it in a few years. And what really surprised me about this fight was how uncomfortable Floyd was. Like, I don't remember Floyd Mayweather being that uncomfortable, but he was very uncomfortable in this fight. And it took Floyd maybe 6.5, 7 rounds to really get into a decent rhythm. And it goes to show you the level that Hatton was at, because Floyd Mayweather fights are normally easy. This fight for Floyd, it got easier towards the end, but the first part of it and parts of the middle were very difficult. Floyd, it took Floyd a little bit of time to get that space to operate and to land that straight lead right hand. But once he started landing it and he found the home for it, man, Ricky Hatton couldn't defend it. He couldn't defend the lead right hand. Floyd kept landing it over and over and over again. And my favorite thing about this fight, because we have this problem with American fighters. American fighters aren't like patriotic the way fighters from Mexico are, or fighters in the UK are. And then they wonder why they don't have the support, right, of the American people. Because there's really nobody that wants to be an American fighter. But what I liked about Floyd was he was a patriotic American, and he was the epitome of American exceptionalism. His application and his dedication to the sport of boxing was top notch, bar none. And when he walked out against Ricky Hatton with all these Brits singing Blue Moon, the official song of Manchester City Football Club, he came out to Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA. What a guy. What a freaking guy. And as the fight wore on, and as the straight right hands began to rain down in the middle of the ring at the MGM Grand Garden Arena, and he began to beat the living shit out of Ricky Hatton, chants of USA, USA, USA broke out, and they were consistent in the back half of that fight. And there's not too many fighters in America that could fight a British fighter or a Mexican fighter at the MGM Grand, where traditionally there will be a pro Mexican British crowd and get the crowd to chant USA, USA. So it was a beautiful thing. Floyd Mayweather, the Captain America of boxing. Floyd Mayweather, the Hulk Hogan of boxing. Floyd Mayweather, the freaking American Patriot of boxing. But it was a really good fight. The only criticism I have of the fight, and the biggest criticism I have of the fight, and the thing that really pissed me off and grinded my gears, was Joe Cortez. I thought Joe Cortez he was really annoying in this fight. He was doing all he could to not allow Ricky Hatton to work on the inside. He wouldn't shut the hell up whenever the fighters got close and Ricky Hatton closed the gap. And I really feel like Joe Cortez tried to make himself the star of the show. And luckily Floyd Mayweather closed the show in grand fashion. But man, that was really the only thing that pissed me off about the fight. Other than that, I thought Ricky Hatton was a determined warrior. He showed that he was actually, in my opinion, probably one of Floyd's toughest opponents, but nobody ever talks about that, because all they remember is Floyd landing that big ass left hook on him and making him run into the turnbuckle. But before that, the rounds before that, Ricky Hatton was making Floyd work. Ricky Hatton had Floyd uncomfortable. I don't think he was winning the fight or anything like that, but I just think Floyd didn't look like his normal sharp self early on and in the middle parts of the fight. He had to really work to become comfortable in the ring, and that's very hard to do when you're fighting a guy like Floyd Mayweather, who is so good at setting his pace, setting his time, setting his tempo, setting his rhythm in the fight, his whole imprint on the fight. And Ricky Hatton was able to really kind of stymie that and make it a difficult night for him, and that's what it was. Now Floyd stopped him in the 10th round, in the middle of the 10th round. Floyd went on to continue to break pay-per-view records against the likes of Canelo Alvarez and Shane Mosley and guys like that. Or maybe Shane was before, I can't remember right now. But he fought, Cotto and Canelo and Pacquiao and just shattered more records. This fight did 920,000 pay-per-view buys. Floyd retired for 20 months plus after this fight because he said he wanted a rest. Came back, fought Marquez. But for me personally, this is one of my favorite Floyd fights because it was a fight where things didn't go his way. I feel like Ricky Hatton really made things tough on him. I also believe too, this is a fight where to me, this fight was kind of like the hybrid of Pretty Boy and Money, because he hadn't fully become that defense first guy yet, and he wasn't overly offensive, but he still had a bit of that offensive flair of a Pretty Boy Floyd at times in this fight. So I feel like this is kind of like the hybrid of Pretty Boy and Money. This fight right here. And it was great to watch. You know, Al Heyman was in the crowd. It was one of the fights where you can kind of see Al Heyman in the crowd. And, you know, when you're a fighter like Floyd, who's been pound for pound for so long, and then you're walking into the arena in your own country, and you got 7,000 to 10,000 people cheering against you. They're going crazy at anything Ricky Hatton does. You know, a lesser man would feel a lot of pressure to perform, and I'm sure Floyd did, but he found a way to win, and that's what. And like he says himself, a true champion can adapt to any situation. So to me, this fight for me would probably be my top 3 favorite Floyd fights to watch. The Ricky Hatton fight, and that's what it was. And shout out to Ricky Hatton. Ricky Hatton was the real deal. He was the truth, and I really wish people would you know, give Ricky Hatton more credit than they do. People forget that Ricky Hatton was a big time fighter. Just, you know, he lost to Floyd, he lost to Manny Pacquiao, okay, and he lost to Senchenko when he was old and 3 years out the ring. So I don't really count Senchenko, but I mean, in his prime, he only lost to Floyd and Pacquiao, and there's no shame in that. Those are 2 generational talents. But remember, when Ricky Hatton was right, you know, he was a great 140 pounder. That's not debatable. He stopped Castillo. He stopped Costa Zoo. He stopped Paul Malignaggi. He beat Juan Lascano. He beat some good fighters. You know, and even picked him up at welterweight. So put some motherfucking respect. And I don't mean to curse. I'm trying to cut down on curses, but put some respect on Ricky Hatton's name, man, because he really was the real deal. And yeah, that's what it is. Those are my thoughts on Floyd versus Ricky Hatton. So yeah, leave your comments down below. Make sure you guys take the time to subscribe. And like I say in every single one of these videos, you can love me or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Daniel. So until next time, take care.
Just like Mayweather's uncles would say, a lot of people don't know shit about boxing. You know, you do. You've done it.
Thank you.
You about the only smart guy that I know, bro. Nobody knows shit about boxing.
I appreciate it, man.
I want to say, man, make sure to follow True School Sports, always covering boxing at the highest level, man, and make sure to subscribe to his YouTube channel. Follow him on Instagram at Just a Kid from Dania as well.
He the plug.